Hidden women. We're going to talk about Lydia and Priscilla. They were anything but hidden in the early days of the church. These women were well known among believers. They were students of Paul and valuable partners with him in fostering the growing church. So that's who we're focusing on today.
So welcome to Double Take.
I'm Lori.
And I'm Rick.
We're with Oneness Ministries.
And brought to you by Oneness Ministries.
That too. Oneness-ministries.org. Go there, find out everything we do, all of our productions, and we started as counselors. We still do that.
Yep.
Find us on social media, and if you'd like to support us, you can certainly do that anytime you want. Anything you want to say, Rick?
Gosh. No.
That's just the way I like it.
It's just the way it is.
So yeah, Lydia and Priscilla are the last two we want to talk about this time. But there's a lot of women that are named and unnamed.
Yep.
That we can't include everybody, but there were a lot.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we're starting.
And I thought this was a really good series. Mm-hmm. It's been a really good series.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
I have too.
And let me just say before we get into this, there are books about these women. One is called "Tell Her Story" by Nijay Gupta, and we got some information from him. There's an online. She has a website. She's a biblical scholar named Marg Moscow. She's fabulous, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today came from her. There's The Making of Biblical Womanhood by Beth Allison Barr. There's a lot. There's others that I can't even remember the names of, but there's a lot out there about these women. And it's fascinating also the men in the early church. It's not just women. We're just focusing on women because they don't always get a lot of notoriety or whatever.
That's true.
So it's really been encouraging to read all of this because they were no different than us. They had a different life. They lived in a different culture, but they were the ones that started the ball rolling. And here we are 2,000 something years later. If you're a believer, you're a part of this story still.
It's continuing to unfold in front of us.
Yeah.
And we get to not only study the history, but we get to experience the present and look forward to the future of what God is doing in his kingdom.
Yeah. So we get to go back and honor these people who they did literally, okay, I can't say literally because I make a big deal about the word literally. People don't use literally like it really means, but these people did turn the world upside down.
They did.
Not literally because it would be like.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, okay, start
You're
us
so literally, she's very literal.
I'm very literal. Yes, I am. I'm a concrete person.
Yep.
Okay. You want to get us started, Rick, about Lydia? We're going to talk about Lydia first, and then we'll get to Priscilla.
Lydia's story is primarily found in the book of Acts, where she's introduced as a resident of Philippi, a city in the region of Macedonia. She is first mentioned in Acts 16, 13 through 15.
Mm-hmm. I'll read that.
Okay.
It says, "And on the Sabbath day, we went outside the city's gate to the bank of the river," this is Paul, "where we supposed there was an accustomed place of prayer, and we sat down and addressed the women who had assembled there. One of those who listened to us was a woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira, a dealer in fabrics dyed in purple. She was already a worshiper of God, and the Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul."
Okay.
I guess Paul wasn't writing this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If in the book of Acts, yeah.
Oh, yeah, silly me. Book of Acts, yeah.
Probably Luke or somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
She was a woman of God.
She was already a believer.
She was already a believer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating that she was a dealer of fabric dyed in purple. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we're going to talk about that.
We are.
She was already a worshiper of God and opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul.
What fascinates you about that?
That Paul was so influential that he attracted people from practically all over the world, or the known world at that time.
I'm pretty sure people knew who he was.
Yeah. And so I guess she heard about him. She goes, I'm going to go listen to this guy, and then became a follower or a patron.
Well, they went to this, we're going to talk more about this, but the women were already there when Paul showed up.
So they were already worshiping in this place. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, back to the verses. And when she was baptized along with her household, she earnestly entreated us, saying, if in your opinion I am one really convinced that Jesus is the Messiah and the author of salvation, and that I will be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay. And she induced us to do it.
Wow.
So it sounds to me like that was where she was baptized, because that's what it sounds like to me. And so she's like, Paul, if you think I'm the real deal, come stay with me. I want you to come stay with me. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Lydia's conversion is significant for several reasons. She is recognized as the first recorded convert to Christianity in Europe.
Yeah.
Making a pivotal moment in the spread of the gospel beyond Asia Minor.
It's already spreading.
Yep.
Yeah.
Her baptism, along with her household, indicates the early practice of household conversions, which played a crucial role in the growth of the early church.
So let's stop for a minute and talk about household, because we think of household as family, mother, father, kids, and it was that, but it was also servants and sometimes friends. It was a large group of people generally. So when you say household, it was all of those people that lived in her home.
Wow.
So it's not just, and she wasn't married that they know of, so we'll get into that too. But so it was very influential. Households were different than they are now. This is kind of the Western, there it was not. It was huge. Sometimes people stayed for months and months. Friends.
So household could be a community.
Yeah, I don't think it's like the whole town.
Right.
But again, it's servants and maids and stuff like that.
Yeah, your point is that it wasn't just her and her kids.
No, we don't even know that she had kids.
Yeah, or whatever.
Anyway, yeah. So back to, like I mentioned before, Maud Moscow. She wrote a lot about this. She said, Paul's first ministry encounter in Philippi was with a group of women. This group included Lydia, a woman originally from Thyatira, like we said. In Acts 16, she's mentioned by name at the very beginning of Paul's mission in Philippi and at the very end when Paul leaves Philippi. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is.
These few verses in Acts 16 contain interesting information about Lydia and the important role she played in the Philippian church. And this explains how he came upon them. She said, Paul typically began a new mission in each new city by connecting with the local Jewish population. Paul and his team had already spent a few days in the city, probably organizing accommodation and work, when on the Sabbath day they went outside the city gates in search of a Jewish place of prayer by a river. Many synagogues and prayer houses were built near water sources such as rivers to facilitate ritual washings. So she made a point to differentiate between a synagogue and a prayer house. You had to have enough people, usually men, to warrant a full-blown synagogue. And so there probably wasn't. And so they had a Jewish prayer house, which was not on the same level as a synagogue.
But it was by a river, and that's fascinating as well.
So I guess it was real easy to get baptized for her right then. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
In Acts 16, 14a, we are given several pieces of information about Lydia. We are told her name, that she was a dealer in purple cloth, that she was originally from the city of
Thyatira,
and that she was a worshiper of God.
Well, the term they used is God worshiper. And we're going to talk about why that's important, because that's a different kind of thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Considering the descriptions in Acts of other people who Paul met on his missions, an appreciable amount of information is given about Lydia. I suggest we are giving this information because the author of Acts uses her as an example of a significant woman.
So yeah, she's saying that it was important when he meant he's not saying that people whose names he doesn't mention are not important, but
Yeah.
I think it has to do with her being known at the time in circles, which we'll talk about that too. So
Go ahead.
there's a professor at McMaster Divinity College named Dr. Cynthia Westfall. She notes that women in the first century Roman world, like Lydia, quote, were entering the public sphere in business and as patrons, and they impacted the early church in those roles as well. So we're going to take a closer look at the description in Acts 16:14.
The fact that Lydia is named at all is significant. The names of other Philippians, such as the slave girl or the jailer, are not given, even though they were told some of their stories in Acts 16 through 20 and 22. That Lydia is named suggests she was a woman who became prominent in the church at Philippi. Lydia was a seller of purple.
That's usually the only thing that we know about Lydia.
Right.
Most of the time, when I saw her name, I thought, yeah, she sold purple, and that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that is, she was a businesswoman who sold luxury textiles dyed purple. It was only the wealthy elite who wore garments dyed or trimmed with purple or had soft furnishings in their homes, such as couch covers that were purple. She is described literally in Acts 16 as a purple seller. So she was not involved in the messy dyeing process herself. She's not called a purple dyer in the text.
It's interesting that they made that distinction.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it would have been obvious to the first century church, but not so much to us, because I thought she dyed it and sold it.
Yeah.
The expenses involved in her occupation as a merchant of luxury textiles indicate she was a woman of some wealth. A lot of those.
Yep.
Lydia's wealth is also indicated by the fact that she seems to have been the owner and mistress of her own home.
I would think that would be pretty unusual in that time.
Yeah, I think so. Because Acts 16:15 begins with, when she and her household were baptized, and that makes it clear that it was her household. Furthermore, Lydia uses her own initiative and doesn't consult a male relative when she offers the missionaries hospitality, which they accept. There is no mention of a husband or a father in her story. This is unusual, as you said, as women in the ancient world were often identified by their relationship to a man, a father, a husband, an adult son, or even a brother. Lydia likely had no surviving adult male relatives. She may have been a widow or perhaps divorced. Divorce was easy under Roman law. You almost just had to say it.
Yeah.
It was not uncommon, and in many cases, it did not result in any sense of scandal or stigma. Whatever her marital status, Lydia's home was relatively spacious. It was large enough to accommodate Paul and his fellow missionaries, who included Silas, probably Timothy, and perhaps Luke and others. Is large enough, and as well as her own household. Her home was also large enough to hold church meetings. It was Lydia's home that the church at Philippi first gathered.
Wow. Very interesting.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool. Lydia's hospitality and her benefaction of Paul and his ministry required courage.
I think maybe.
Yes. Having a group of foreign men stay at her house might potentially cause a scandal. Hosting meetings where they worshipped a new Jewish Messiah, which was not popular either, and not an emperor or any of the ancient and socially respectable pagan gods, could have ruined her reputation and her business. Receiving Paul and Silas into her home after they were released from prison and asked to leave town was brave, as some in Philippi were angry with the missionaries.
Yeah, and that story is where in Acts 16:19 through 22 talks about where Paul cast out the evil spirit from the slave girl, and that's why he was imprisoned, and the Philippians were not happy with him.
Well,
That's why.
Yeah, he destroyed a resource.
Yeah, a lucrative business.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Lydia is identified as a God worshiper, sometimes translated as a God-fearer. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah. Well, this description tells us that Lydia was a Gentile adherent to Judaism rather than a full convert. So there's a difference. In the first decades of the church's existence, almost all Christian converts were either Jews or they were Gentiles with some kind of affiliation or sympathy with Judaism. So that describes her. She wasn't a Jew that converted to Christianity. She wasn't necessarily a pagan worshiper, whatever, pagan.
Yeah.
She was a Gentile that converted to Judaism.
She was a person who accepted Christ.
She certainly was.
Yes.
So at that time, it's well documented that some Gentiles were attracted to the monotheism and the morality of Judaism. So let's think about that for a minute, because you're living in the Roman Empire and they had a God for everything, pretty much. And so you're also in between. So she went from nothing to Judaism to Christianity. So she's kind of, she was brave, had a little courage, as did the believers back then. Did have to have a lot of courage. There was a lot they were trying to fly under the radar and yet live out the life of Christ and spread the good news at the same time.
Well, and one of the dangers is that the Romans considered Caesar the god. And as you said, they had a god for everything. But if you didn't worship Caesar, then you were not loyal to Rome.
Yeah, there was a lot to navigate.
Yes.
Back then. In some parts of the Roman Empire, women could play prominent roles in their Jewish communities, especially in places where women already had some social freedoms. Ancient inscriptions survive that show a few women were even called leaders of synagogues. Other women were patrons of synagogues and were prominent and influential in their Jewish communities. So Lydia may have been a patron of the Jewish community at Philippi.
Okay, stop for a minute.
First, yes.
Stop for a minute. A patron, obviously, is someone who supports a movement or other people with money. And so I wonder how common it was for a Gentile to support a Jewish community. That's got to be really,
That's interesting.
Once again, courageous.
So, but she converted to the Jewish faith and then became a believer.
Yeah.
But so she was born a Gentile. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's good. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So after she was likely a patron of the Jewish community, then she likely became a patron and a leader of the church in Philippi. She was clearly a leader because it met in her house.
Yeah. She had to be a leader. Yeah.
So Paul and his party may have spent several weeks staying with Lydia, and during that time she would have received, directly and indirectly, a theological and pastoral education from the apostle, so that she was equipped to care for the church when Paul moved on to bring the gospel to other Macedonian cities. So she trained with Paul.
She trained with Paul.
Yeah, in her house. How cool would that be?
Oh, man. Furthermore, she seems to have been spiritually receptive, a spiritually receptive person. We know the Lord opened Lydia's heart, Acts 16:14. So it is probable the Spirit gave her spiritual gifts and abilities to help her in her ministry. Acts 2:18 and 1 Corinthians 12:4. On the practical side, Lydia's experience of running a very large household and running a business would have been useful in managing and caring for a congregation. Perhaps she had helped to organize the meetings of women at the Jewish prayer house.
So her talents enabled her to do what God had for her.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice to know that even women with talents get to do things in ministry or of service.
Yeah, you use the word get. God prepared her for this position. And in our culture, in our time, women just aren't viewed as spiritual leaders.
Depending on the flavor of Christianity you're in.
I got you.
Yes.
Got you. But the major ones,
The major evangelical ones,
yeah, well,
I would say.
even Catholicism won't allow them to be in positions of authority. So yeah, I mean, it blows my mind
Yeah.
that the church has rewritten Scripture
Or they ignore
or
it.
ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yep. Go ahead.
So Lydia is the only Philippian convert who is named in Acts. And we know that the Philippian church met in her home. So she is the most likely person to have led and cared for the first congregation at Philippi.
Wow.
That's quite an accomplishment. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
You got any other thoughts about Lydia before we move on?
Well,
We should be wearing purple,
yeah, we should.
but we're not. We're wearing chosen stuff today.
We have chosen apparel. I am a man who was raised with a Baptist background. And I believed and I supported the idea that women were not to be in positions of leadership except for Sunday school, vacation
taking
Bible
care
school,
of kids.
taking care of kids,
Or other women.
or preparing meals, or just doing stuff that men really don't want to do.
Oh, there's a perspective.
Yes. And so they were relegated to sub-leadership positions under the authority of the man. I think that's
A waste.
definitely a waste, but mostly unconscionable.
To be fair, it had become so ingrained in history when organized religion got more organized that I think most of these people, even the women, sometimes just believe that that's the way it's supposed to be, and we just accept it. And I think that their hearts are in the right place. A lot of these people, they think this is legitimately what God wants.
Sure.
And not everybody is out to just, put their thumb on women. That's just not
I got you.
the case.
And
Some are.
And I agree with you, but it is 2025. You would think that as a civilization, we would advance to the place where we consider women equal and talented and have the ability to lead and teach
Within the church.
within the church.
Right. Because the world tends to pervert that.
Yep.
How women are portrayed too. That's another story, and that's later on.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Who's the next one?
next one is Priscilla, which I really enjoyed learning out about her. Her official name is Prisca. Priscilla is a diminutive, affectionate nickname, which means little Prisca, which I think is sweet. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Her name means ancient, as in respected or honored.
Wow.
And her husband, who is Aquila, his name means eagle.
Wow.
So we meet Priscilla along with her husband in Acts 18, 1-3. You want to read that?
Sure. After this, Paul departed from Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus.
I think.
Yeah. Recently arrived from Italy with Priscilla, his wife, due to the fact that Claudius had issued an edict that all the Jews were to leave Rome. And Paul went to see them. And because he was of the same occupation, he stayed with them, and they worked together, for they were tent makers by trade. That is fascinating.
Why?
That he found somebody who was doing the same thing that he did and united their efforts in order to present the gospel.
Almost like there was a plan.
Almost like there was a plan. You're right.
So I found a lot more information again from Marg Moscow. She says, Priscilla and Aquila had previously spent a year and a half working and ministering alongside the Apostle Paul in Corinth.
A year and a half.
Year and a half
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
Then they all three had set sail together for Ephesus. Paul then left Priscilla and Aquila in Ephesus, where they were equipped to minister, having spent so much time watching, listening, and learning firsthand from Paul.
Another group of people who he trained.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. They were an influential ministry team. This is important. Priscilla and her husband Aquila were leaders.
Why is that important to you?
It's important because it's not just these single women, widowed women, never married women. It's not just women. This is a picture of a marriage, for one, and as a team who apparently the man wasn't threatened by her, and she wasn't afraid to be the more outspoken, which it seems like she was. And I think it's a really great picture of marriage as well.
Sort of like this one.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
So the two of them were leaders in a house church they hosted in Ephesus and later in a house church in Rome. They were well known in Ephesus, Corinth, and Rome. They were also well equipped to teach, even to an impressive speaker like Apollos. This was an interesting story. You want to talk about Apollos?
He is eloquent, or was eloquent, knowledgeable, fervent, and bold. Priscilla and her husband Aquila were in the synagogue in Ephesus listening to him speak about Jesus. But they noticed something lacking in his message. Apollos did not know about Christian baptism. That's interesting.
Well, yeah. They were listening and paying attention.
Yep. Of all the Christians in the city, it was Priscilla and Aquila who approached Apollos with the aim of explaining the way of God, i.e. theology, to him more accurately. Acts 18:26. Go ahead.
Well, that they approached him may well be an indication of the couple's function as leaders or elders in the Christian community at Ephesus.
So they had some
clout
or some recognition or some
authority.
Yes.
Several English translations of Acts 18:26 state that Priscilla and Aquila took Apollos aside. Other translations, however, state that the couple invited him into their home.
Okay.
So depending on which translation. But considering the culture of hospitality in ancient societies and the importance of fellowship for the first Christians, the translation that Priscilla and Aquila invited Apollos into their home is probably the correct one.
Yeah.
And you would think, too, that this is not, hey, let me pull you aside in the synagogue and let's talk about this.
No, I'm sure they had
probably a private conversation.
Yeah, and they probably had a very deep discussion about this.
I'm sure they did.
Apollos and Aquila, as well as Luke, who records this story, do not appear to be any way concerned that Priscilla, a woman, took the lead in ministering to Apollos. What?
He was a man.
A man.
Mm-hmm.
That she played a more prominent part is indicated by Priscilla's name coming before her husband's in Acts 18:26, verse 26.
Mm-hmm.
In the more reliable Greek manuscripts. So that is an issue then. That woman's name was...
It's unusual. It's not an issue, but it's several times. The order of their names in Acts and in Paul's letters is significant because in that society, the man's name is usually mentioned first. Yeah. So the author of Tell Her Story, Nijay Gupta, believes, he said, a more likely theory is that Prisca was the more active and therefore more widely known ministry leader. So think about that. He mentions her first in the letter because people will go, oh, yeah, I know her. Yeah. I know that name.
Yeah, I know,
Maybe she was very outgoing and he was very quiet. Maybe she was more visible in what she did than he was, because Paul was not a respecter of
persons.
I mean, it was just a logical thing.
a few years later is when Paul would send his letter delivered by Phoebe.
Yeah, the one we talked about before, and the Phoebe one.
Yep. Greeting this couple who were now leading a house church in Rome. Again, Priscilla is mentioned first before her husband. In fact, she is mentioned first in Paul's list of the 28 Roman Christians he acknowledged. Great Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus, they risked their lives for me. Not only I, but the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. Greet also the church that meets in their house.
Wow. Romans 16. Yeah. I mean, so we wanted to end this series with this ministry couple for a reason. Because, as I mentioned a little bit before, our focus on women is not to demean or lessen the importance of men.
Of course not.
Which, in our opinion, is the end result of modern feminism. In the garden before the fall, there was equality between the man and the woman. They were created differently, to be sure, but they were equally valued, intelligent, empowered, and loved. This was God's original design. But then everything changed. Jesus showed us how to go back to what God intended. And the early church was a good example of that as well. And so now we get to make that choice.
Amen.
Any thoughts, my dear?
Well, my thoughts are the same. I think it's a waste to not let women be more prominent, more active, more involved. And my hope is that as these podcasts are viewed or listened to, people will begin to change their mind about what they believe Scripture says and stop taking verses out of context, stop reading verses that have been misinterpreted by a scribe or some translator who thinks patriarchy is the way to go. It is not. I think it is false. I think God intended for men and women to serve him in the same capacity.
Together. Yeah. And if all else fails, look at how Jesus treated women.
For sure.
And Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So if nothing else, look at the character of Christ.
Yes.
And let that be your guide.
It was a good series.
So there.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll be back next week with
new stuff. You'll just have to wait and see what it is.
Yes, because we don't know.
Yeah. And if you're interested, don't forget in our free study guides, shoot me an email, lfry@oneness-ministries.org, and we'll put you on the list and we'll send you a free study guide that goes with each of these podcasts every Wednesday.
Yep. You'll be finding that there are people who read the study guides without listening to the
we want you to listen.
Which
and
is okay.
watch
No,
because we're
okay.
cute.
Yeah.
We keep hearing we're a cute little couple.
We are as bugs' ears.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Bye.